Cool. Um, yeah, so this was your first time installing Unity Hub and you wanted to get started with Unity, then what you would want to do is go to installs and you'd want to install one of the editors. So that once you're in this tab, you just go up here to install editor. And then what you're going to see is a lot of stuff, which could be overwhelming. So here you have their newest version on the top, which is Unity 6. So Unity actually used to be like numbered also, like I forgot what the last one was, like Unity, 3 and then 4, maybe like 4.5, whatever. And then they switched to the years. So they were like doing 2021, 2022, as you can see here. But then I guess they're going back to the number. Like I think it's because they couldn't keep up with the years, because you can see that the last one is 2022 and there's no 2023. And I guess they didn't want to make it 2024, so I think they just gave up and they went back to the numbers so they can not have to release one every year. But yeah, so my recommendation is to if you're just playing around and experimenting, you might want to download Unity 6. But if you're trying to do this like for work or like you have a major project that you're actually working on that you want to see to like fulfillment, I recommend going with one of the older versions. And so you have these versions here that they have this little LTS tag that stands for, I think it's long term. What is it?
Long-term support.
Yeah, long-term support. I went blank for a second. Yeah, so that's our long-term support ones. So I recommend going with those usually. And so what you usually see here too is you'll see whatever the newest version is. I don't have I have 2022.3, but I don't have the 0.32 version because I just installed this for what's happening. There's a recording screen. So yeah, so you just want to install the 2022.3.32. You just click install there. Just like I'm not gonna do this, but I'll just show the window. Once you click install, you'll get a code editor that it'll install for you. So it installs Visual Studio. So that's where you do all code writing if you do any of that. And then down here, you get to choose all the different platforms. So you'd want to pick whatever platforms that you're planning on building in. So if you wanted to make a phone game, you want to choose like Android and probably like iOS. If you want to make like a PC build, there is the Windows build support here, the Windows build support, and probably like Mac you'd want to do if you want to have your game work on Mac. And then there's also like Linux build support, also just modernize the TV. Either one of those is probably fine, or both. Probably the IL2 CPP, if you had to choose one, is probably the more latest one. You also have a bunch of other stuff. I don't have to go too much in detail on this, but lots of platforms. So that's one of the benefits of building with a game engine is that if you want to make some sort of app, like by default, you want to make like an Android app, and you weren't using some tool like Unity, then you have to write like native code that would only work on Android, and then you try to get it to work on iOS, you'd have to go and code on an Xcode and Objective-C or whatever. But nowadays, there's a lot of tools that you can use to publish on both. Save yourself a lot of trouble. So yeah, so you'd want to do, in this case, I'm assuming if you're PC or Mac, you want to do PC, right? If you have PC and you want to build to a Mac, you can't. You have to have a Mac to build to Mac. Same thing with iOS. You can actually build out an iOS build, but if you want to deploy that onto an iPhone, you do need a Mac. So if you ever plan on doing game development and you want to be able to publish to those, you're gonna have to buy yourself a Mac at some point. But yeah, if you have a PC, just install Windows build support. If you have a Mac, install Mac build support. So I'm not going to install these. I'm just going to back out. It probably will take a while to install. So here I already have 2022.3.30. And then what I did too for this, just to have something to sample, because I don't have any like projects that I can show other than work stuff that I probably shouldn't really show. So what I did is I just went to the Learn tab. Actually, no, if you go to projects, sorry, I'm out of order here. You go to projects, and let's say you want to make a new project. You just click up here. So there's this big blue button. It says new project. Oh, you know what? I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself too. I don't know if people were actually installing, but I put my About Me slide here. That way, if people were installing, you'd have time to finish installing. So I will jump back to tab. I'm sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah. Right. So about me, while people are enjoying it. So I don't really like talking about myself too much, but I just remember when I was a student, I always wanted to know who was talking to me. So that's why I do this. So I have about 10 years of professional Udemy experience. That's working at companies. Um, Currently, I'm the head of development for a local company. Oh, it's on the bottom. Currently, head of development for a local company at XALTER, which is just a local studio that does like serious games. So we do like a lot of XR training simulations, mostly for VR training simulations. And we do a lot of simulations that are related to like oil and gas. We just kind of ended up falling in that category because we did some oil and gas stuff. And then so once you have that, you can show other oil and gas companies and then they're interested. Um, so that's, and we also do a lot of work for like universities. One of our major clients is Oklahoma State University, OSU. We also have a couple other ones. So those are fun because they always give us a lot of random stuff. Like we have one that is like how to cut meat. So like you get the whole like the pig carcass, and then it shows you, walk you step by step on how to get all the different kinds of meat, like the pork chop and the loin and whatever all those words are. So it's kind of fun because you kind of learn some of that. You pick up on some of that stuff as well as you're developing the program to do it. We also, let's see, we have one that's place settings, which is based on a menu, like if it's fine dining menu, how to set the table, where the plate and the fork go, like the fork goes on the right side and the salad plate goes over here and all that stuff. So interesting stuff. Well, I put 7 companies that's how many I kind of worked at that all were Unity, the companies that work Unity. So I've hopping around for past 10 years. I didn't put it here, but I also taught Unity for local community college. I taught at Northwest Vista College for a few years. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but yep, that's me. Probably more stuff, but that's good enough. It's been a while since I've had to talk in front. Since I was the teacher, right? I haven't really talked in front of a big group, so warming up. Okay. So next one. Yeah, so the new project stuff. All right, so we're back on Unity Hub. It had the version installed and all that. What you can do now is on the top right, new project. And I guess I'll go over some of these before I do exactly what we're gonna do. So they have a lot of options now. It used to be that there was no options, so this could be a little bit overwhelming, I feel like. But in general, if you wanted to make a 2D game, then you would just choose the 2D core, and then if you wanted to do a 3D game, you do 3D core. But really, if you pick any of these, it's not really going to tie you or lock you down into any specific thing. It's just kind of setting up some of the settings for you so that it's easier. Like, for example, you pick 3D and you bring in an image like a PNG, it's going to interpret that as like a 3D texture. And then if you do that, if you're in 2D, the import settings are going to default to like sprites and stuff like that. So they can just kind of, but you can easily change those settings if you know how once you're in the editor. And then they got a lot of new stuff too, what they call the universal pipeline. So there's universal 2D and universal 3D. If you wanted to have like a little more control over your graphic pipeline and like the rendering fidelity, like you wanted to go for like AAA quality and stuff like that, and you wanted to write your own shaders and have a lot of control over that, that's what the universal pipelines are for. So again, you can easily switch. I think it's actually easier to switch from core to universal than backwards. That one's a little bit harder to switch back and forth between. So you kind of have to decide that early on. And some of these you do have to download. Oh, there's also the high definition one that's just even more control and fidelity. And then some of these are just like kind of trying to help you. Like if you're trying to do a VR game, you can start with a VR template and all kinds of stuff like that. I generally just tend to start from scratch and build it all up rather than try to start from one of these templates. But that's up to you when you're experimenting. And then what I did too here is that once you're on this new project, I think it's under learning. Yeah. So you can go to the learning tab and then there's like some pre-made projects. So that's what we're going to be using today. Just because I wanted to, I don't want to open up a bare bones project that doesn't have anything in it. It's kind of hard to showcase things in there. So using this learning project, we can kind of get our hands in a project that's already kind of going that we can mess around with the assets and stuff. So yeah, you just go to learning and then you just choose this one. Now, disclaimer, I haven't done 2D stuff in forever, so I had to brush up on some of this stuff. I mostly do like 3D stuff. I was kind of shocked that they don't have like a 3D learning project, but I didn't want to make things. So go to the 2D one. So just select that, and then once you select that, over here you can name your project and things like that. That's why I had the one that was called my project. I didn't rename it, but you just want to name it there whatever you wanted, like my first project or something like that. And then you can also choose where you want to put the project. So normally I just have like a C folder that holds all my Unity projects. And oh yeah, I guess you want to be logged in for a lot of this stuff. So you can create, once you create a Unity account, you'll have an organization that you can put this under. And so that if you have multiple organizations, you can kind of organize what project is for, whether it's a personal project or a project for a client or anything like that. Back to Unity Cloud. Yeah. You would this is kind of too much topic here. Let's skip that. All right, so I'm not gonna create the project, but if you're creating it right now, you can do that. I'm just gonna cancel. And I already have the project here. Once you create the projects, they're all here on the front page of Unity Hub. Here is my project, and I'll just open that. So to open it, just click it. Now we go.
That's not me. Sorry.
Okay. Once it's done open. So it might take a little bit of time to open. Any questions so far? Yes.
Is Unity free?
Is Unity free? Yes. It's free up to a certain point. So, so if you install Unity, you can develop it for free. I'm a little bit iffy on their current terms, but I know at one point it was like it was free until you made $100,000.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess it's still something like that. I know they recently had that controversy too, where like if you made like a lot of money or like a certain number of users, then they would take a percentage and all that. As far as I heard, they backpedaled a bit on that. Yeah. But yeah, so you use Unity, the personal license, and then once you get to that point, you can purchase a plus license and then eventually a professional license, depending on the tier that you're at. And no. Okay, so once it opens, it should look something like this. I was messing with mine a little bit, so it might look a little different. I actually think the first time you open this project, it'll pop up a little tutorial script and it'll try to walk you through it. So if you were opening that right now for the first time and seeing that, then you can just close out of that, since we're basically going to do that here. And if you wanted, if you're at, if you go home and you want to walk the tutorial yourself and you already closed out of it, then you can just click on tutorials and then do either show tutorials or welcome dialog. I think it might be welcome dialog. And this will walk you through all of the stuff that you can do with projects, some of the stuff you can do in it. Great. So kind of following their script, the first thing we're going to do is just hit play so we can see the game. So in Unity, that's this part up here, just up in the middle in the center. You have the play button, you know, the pause button, and then a frame by frame button. So we just hit play, and then it'll kind of do some compiling. I didn't know there's audio. Yeah, all right. So once you hit play, you'll be playing your game. So you're able to test it just right from the editor. And then WSD, run around, space jump. Oh my god. So yeah, that's this project. Let's see. Yeah. All right. So the first thing that we're gonna do is mess with the speed of the player. So to do that, we're gonna need to use a couple of these windows here. So over here is the hierarchy. So the hierarchy is where we can see all of the game objects that are in the scene. So what we want to do is find our player. You can also click on the player here within the scene view. So here's the scene view. This is just where we can see all the game objects that are in our scene. And then a scene is what you call like a level of your game, but you can kind of do a lot of things with them. You can load up multiple scenes at once to kind of organize like a modular game, like you're doing like a Skyrim or something, and you need to have different sections of your world in different scenes, and then start loading those. Yeah,
I think it's bigger.
it's bigger.
Like zoom in, the font.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess when we started recording, it like cut this off. I'm not sure if there's a great way to make this bigger. The only way I know to make the font bigger in Unity is to switch like your
I think
font size and
there's UI scaling on the pregnancy.
is there?
Project Skin.
Here's on Windows.
What is it?
It's like this on Windows at least, doesn't like this time.
Oh yeah. Well, it's on it. Are you on Windows or
Yeah, it's on
it is which setting?
As UI scaling, yeah, exactly where it's at. I'm pretty sure it's
Is it on preferences?
probably yeah.
Plus or something.
Let's see. Edit preferences. UI. Oh, nice. Didn't have that. Oh. Oh, I have to restart it to effect.
Sorry.
125% is probably good, or
Make it
Don't do at
least
least 150.
150. All right, so let's close out. And could be faster opening it a second time. Really bigger. I'm looking at my desktop.
Oh, nice.
It is. A little better.
Great. Yeah, so all right, so this is the hierarchy. In the hierarchy, you can see the scene. So if you have multiple scenes loaded, you'll see them, your sample scene and then whatever other scene, and you can drop those, you collapse those and expand them with the triangle thingy on the left. And then in the scene view, you can see all the game objects that exist in the scene. Sometimes sometimes easier to select in your scene view, sometimes easier to select in the hierarchy, so it just depends. And then the third window we're going to be using here to do this is the inspector. So right now it's empty because I don't have anything selected. But once I locate my player, which is right here, so you can see it here, this player. So you just click that, and once you select the player, then you'll see all the components that are on the player in the inspector. So let's see. So in the inspector, we see all the components. Unity is considered like a component-based design kind of like system. So every game object is just a series of components kind of put together. So in this case, the player has a transform, which pretty much everything in Unity does. So the entire player is a game object, and every single game object, pretty much, except like UI elements have their own version of it. They have a transform. So the transform is just its position in space. I'm not sure like how in depth to go with this. I don't know. I know some people might not be very familiar with the game. So for people who are familiar with this stuff a little bit already, it might sound like really basic. But yeah, so there's the position, which is the XYZ position in it, and then the rotation is its rotation, and the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. So these are going to be like well, 180 degrees would be like halfway turned around. If I were to grab the Z here and I did 180, then he would be upside down because it's rotated 180. And then the scale is how big he is. So you can scale him like in the X, for example, would stretch him this way. And then you can also now click the select button, which will just do a uniform scale. Which I advise everybody to usually stick with uniform scale or get your assets to the correct scale rather than scaling everything too much because it can get start breaking things. Alright, so the player also has these scripts. So we covered the transform. Now we're seeing the player controller. So this is a custom script that's written that controls the player. So that's what makes him move around when we hit WASD and the space bar to jump. That's all because there's a script on him telling him to do that. Then we also see the sprite render. So that's showing the player's sprite, rendering it. Animator is what's animating him. The rigid body 2D is what's giving him 2D physics. And his audio source is probably what's playing the like almost sounds when you jump in and stuff. Health, comparative health, and the box collider is his collider. So if you want to go in there and adjust what part of it, like him collides with the world or gets hit by the enemies or whatever, that's because his collider is this size. So you can see here with this kind of green box. So we'll probably mention that stuff more in a bit, but I wanted to go over that. So in this case, we're trying to find the way to increase the player's speed. So to do that, we're gonna have to go to the script that's controlling his movement with the player controller. And here he has a variable called max speed. So yeah, so these are all called variables. These are all in the script. There's if you're a programmer, you probably know this stuff already, but there's variables in the script that when they're public can be seen in the inspector. So it lets you just change them and modify them on the fly instead of having to go to the code and then change it in the code. So that's pretty handy for testing out your game quickly. So in this case, I'm going to change it. We'll just double it, I guess. So I'll do 6. Kind of a, I don't know if people know this, but there's a general game design philosophy of always like doubling your numbers and having your numbers. It's a good way to kind of fine tune things, or so I'm told by game development books. So we're gonna double it, and now if we try to run around, it should be twice as fast. So I think it's still not super fast, probably a little bit more. So again, with the public variable being visible in the inspector, the cool thing is I can come over here and adjust this at runtime. So I'm just going to push this down to 12 and then try again, and then we can super fast. A little bit of they made it so it's hard to jump when you're rubbing against the wall. But yeah, it's very difficult to. Yeah. You have a question?
How can you make it 3D?
How can you make it 3D?
Is it possible?
Well, I mean, you could make the game 3D. It's probably it takes too long to show because all these assets are sprites because they're 2D. So if you're here, we were creating the project, you would just choose a 3D project instead of a 2D project, and then you would just want to get a bunch of 3D assets instead of 2D assets.
Unity Learn has a free 3D Lego mini game that you can download and play with.
Yeah, I guess I should show that real quick. Yeah, if you go to Unity Learn, they have like a ton of stuff there, and they have like tracks, their pathways. So you come in here. Oh, I was messing with it earlier.
Under the creative core.
Yeah, so you would go to the pathway. I think when you first come here, it shows you the pathways. I had already selected one. Yeah. So you have centrals here. You go to centrals. Yeah. Yeah. So they have all that stuff here. I've been using stuff forever. I don't really know my way around. But they walk you through a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So what I was going to show, the reason I didn't unplay before I did that was because one thing that could be a really big kind of like caveat early on when you're first using Unity that trips up a lot of beginners is the fact that when you change anything at runtime, it'll revert those changes once you hit play again, stop playing. Right. So if you remember, the speed was set to 3, and then I set it to 6. But then while I was playing, I set it to 12. So now if I unplay, what's going to happen if you focus your attention on the max speed here that's currently 12, is you're going to see it's going to jump back to 6. So this trips up a lot of people because they will be in play mode and then they'll get like really excited and start changing a bunch of stuff in their game, and they forget they're in play mode. So when they hit stop playing, they just lose all the changes. So that could be pretty bad. So don't do that. So yeah, let's change the speed. Is there any questions on any of that stuff so far? Especially the scene view. Yeah.
So is there a way to save your settings if it's in play mode and you're editing?
Not if it's a lot of changes, but there's gonna be different ways to do it just depending on what changes you did do. So for example, I mean in this case, if I was in play mode and then I hit let's say I change it to 12, then I can obviously just copy and paste that number once I unplay. If you had made a lot of changes, so like say I changed the max speed to 12, I changed the jump speed to like 10 or something, and I changed the gravity modifier to 0.5, like it's more floaty, I assume. And I just made a bunch of changes like that. They're all the same component, and what I could do is I could right click on that component, in this case player controller, and then do copy component. And then once you unplay, you can paste that component back on there. It'll do all those. And there's some nifty tricks too. I don't have anything weird on my notepad. You can actually paste still. Oh, does that work for this one? I know some components this works. Nope, doesn't work for this one. Some stuff like the transforms, you can copy these. Oh, what? It's not working for me.
Only copy one position?
Copy world. Oh. Yeah, I learned this trick from some of my coworkers. There you go. So like when you copy the positions, it actually gives you this JSON like structure that you can copy a bunch of those and then you can go and paste them back one by one. So yeah, there's like other tricks too, depending on what you do. That you kind of figure out as you go. Any other questions? I don't know if we started. All right, next thing. Yeah, change speed. We navigate. Okay, yes. Let's look at how we navigate it here. So again, our scene view is where we see all of our game. And then just a note too, when we hit play, it goes to the game view. So the game view is actually where we see the gameplay happen. So in the scene view, when we want to look around our level, this could change depending on if you're 2D or 3D, but it's generally the same. If you want to pan, then you can just click your middle mouse button and drag. If you don't have a middle mouse button, then what you can do is you can use this hand up here. So you can use that as your view tool. You just click that, and then now you can left click and drag around, and that'll let you navigate your level. And then probably pretty easy to figure out. If you use a scroll wheel, you can zoom in and out. And if you don't have the scroll wheel, then what you could do is you can use Alt and right click, and that'll let you scrub in and out, or like dolly or something like that.
Can you make a 3D game play in a 2D fashion?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, so you could have if this right now this character is a 2D sprite, but he could also be like a 3D model, and you could still put the same 2D colliders on him and treat the game completely as if it's 2D. So yeah, so we got pan, and then zoom, and then if you're in 3D, then you can also rotate. We're not in 3D, but just to show you anyway, you'll see this 2D button right here. If you actually click this, it'll go to 3D mode, and we can see our game in the 3D world. And so Alt and left click would orbit around. So you can kind of like Alt left click, Alt middle click, Alt right click. Just your kind of 3 ways to navigate your space, which if you model in like Maya or something, you're probably familiar with.
But so to add an extra layer to that, it would make it a 3D game.
What do you mean?
So like he's like walking on a single line. But
Yeah.
if you added another line to it, would that make it 3D?
Yeah, well, if you're using the 2D, what's really going to change that is whether you're not using these 2D components. So you see we're using rigid body 2D and box collider 2D. Those colliders kind of extend into infinity. So their Z depth isn't really going to change anything. So even if you had the player there, then you had like the enemy. If we were to grab the enemy here and like move him into the Z, he would still interact with the player because it's 2D collider. So when we go back 2D mode, it's not even gonna look any different.
Shared
even
pipeline.
Huh?
The shader pipelines, like,
Yeah, you have to use even the sorting stuff. So there's sprite renders, and they're being sorted on their certain layers. That's what's controlling whether or not they're being rendered on top of something else or not.
So, like, if play Mario, right? You know, he hits the mushroom, right?
Yeah.
Say, like, you want to go to 3D for like 2 minutes. Let me go back to 2D. No, like film editing or something. But
Yeah, I mean, you can try to solve all the components at runtime. I guess it would just depend exactly what you're trying to do. I mean, you could still have the whole view be like this, like orthographic, and still have the 3D colliders on there. So you can kind of just like have it secretly be 3D and just render it orthographic until you change the camera back to perspective, and then unlock their Z movement, stuff like that. Okay. So yeah, so that's how we navigate. What else we can do? Yeah. They have another demo, they have moving a token. So they have these little coins. I think they call them tokens here. So what we're gonna just show or use to demonstrate is moving this around. So again, we can click these by or select these by just clicking. If you're in the pan view, it's kind of hard to select things, or I guess impossible in this case. So you do need to be like in the move tool or pretty much any other tool except the hand tool. The hand tool is really only useful if you don't have a middle mouse button. If you have a middle mouse button, I would just never select the view tool. It's kind of clumsy, in my opinion. But yeah, you can select the move tool, and then just to help out too, the shortcuts are just the QWERTY keys. So if you're familiar with like 3D modeling, it's the same thing. So Q is going to be your move tool, or the pan tool, view tool. W is your move tool, and then E is rotate, R is scale, kind of the standard in most 3D programs. It's Q, W, E, R. Then for Unity here, especially in 2D, you also have this like sprite editing tool that gives you kind of like Photoshop controls where you can like rotate if you hover the corner, and you can like scale it and that sort of thing. What is this? Oh, this is the everything tool. This one is the move, rotate, and scale all combined into one. And then this is for editing the collider. So anyway, so you're gonna want to be like in one of these three basically if you're wanting to select something. So once you're in the move tool, for example, you can just click on stuff to select it. So in this case, I'm selecting the token. And then once I do that with the move tool, I can move it around. So if you wanted to reposition these, you can do that. And then I guess to make this even more fun, or it's more of a demonstration, what you could do if you wanted to make more is you can also hit Control D. So for duplicate, I'm just gonna hit Control D, and that'll make a second one. And then another beginner caveat or pitfall, I guess is probably the right word, is when you duplicate stuff, they're right on top of each other. So sometimes people can accidentally duplicate something, not realize they did it, and then have two on top of each other. And then now if I played the game, when I collect that one, I would accidentally collect two tokens and maybe not have realized that and be like, why is my tokens two? I only put 100 in this level or something like that. And sometimes too, if they're coded to play an audio sound, really common problem too is that you'll get two audios playing at the exact same time. It'll just be louder. So if you ever play like some game and there's a randomly loud sound, sometimes that could be the issue. So once I duplicate it, I see it's duplicated. Unity will put this parenthesis 1 on it, and then I can move that, and then Control D again, move that one, and you can kind of get like a little thing going. And I decided I was gonna try to make a heart beat. Something like that. I don't know if I should get. There you go. That should work. Yeah, so that's generally how you would place certain things around the level. You can do the same thing with the enemy, obviously, move him around. I thought they did that actually. Okay. So, Anything interesting about this? Other note about that is that you'll notice that they have all of these groups. So very important when you're working on a project to keep everything organized. So you see they create empty game object, or we call them empty game objects, which just means it's kind of like it's just a game object that doesn't really have any like any visual aspect to it in the level. So it's only there just to hold other game objects under it as a child. Which you can do by right-clicking anywhere in here in the hierarchy and hitting create empty. If you have like a really big hierarchy, it's hard to find a spot to right-click, then you can also just hit this plus button up here and plus here, and then you can create empty here. And there's also how you can create a bunch of other things too, as you could see, like effects and stuff. But yeah. Next thing, color. There's so much of random things we can do just to showcase different stuff. So I'll select the player and we're gonna change his color. So that super easy. Again, sprite render is controlling what he looks like. So you can see there's a color property on the player, and we can just click that and then choose another color if we wanted to. So now you're the pink player. Something else to note too, I'll probably show this once I get to the enemy actually, but you'll notice that when I'm changing some of these values, they're turning bold here. That's maybe a little bit of more of an advanced thing than the first talk, but it's because he's a prefab, which is why he's also blue over here. So a prefab is just a collection of all the components and of the game object packaged in a way where you can create more of them. So it's really useful, like for example, for the player, because when I make level 2 and I want to have the player be in level 1 and level 2, then I want to use the prefab in order to drag him out to level 2 and then have him be an exact copy of himself from level 1. And then what that also means is that down the line, when I have like 50 levels and he's in every single level and I want to change something about him, I can change it in one spot and it'll affect all of the players in every single scene because he's a prefab. So it's also a good idea to use those. So when it gets bold, what that means is that I've changed it from the prefab value. So if I did have those 50 levels and I just came in here and I changed his max speed to 6 and it's now the bold, well, he's only going to be a max speed of 6 here, but in every other level, he's going to still be 3. So if I meant to do that on purpose, that can be a good thing. But if you wanted to apply that to everything, then what you could do is just right click it and then just apply the prefab here. And then it will be not bold anymore. And that just means that now every single player's speed is going to be 6. Same thing with the color. And since I didn't note it, I'm also just going to, actually, I guess we're talking about this project doing next. Yeah. Okay. Any questions about that stuff? So last thing on this note here is adding more player or more enemies. So you can see it says add enemy prefab. That's because these enemies are also prefab. You can see they're blue. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to have to actually use our project window here for the first time. So the project window is where we store all of our assets, right? So just to kind of review, we had the hierarchy view, which lets us see all of the game objects that currently exist in our current scene. For the scene view, lets us see all those objects. The inspector, which shows us all of the components that are on whatever game object we have selected. But the project view is where we actually have those assets stored. So like our enemy and our player assets are on there, all the scripts. So when we want to add like a new component to something, we're going to probably be pulling that from our project view if it's stripped anyway. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I want to navigate to my the enemy. So I'm just going to scroll up here. You'll see we have assets. That's always the top folder in any Unity project is assets, except for, I mean, I guess there's the Unity project, and then there's assets under that, and then you have usually a bunch of other like scripts, assemblies and stuff, and library folder. So I'm gonna find the enemies. So in this case, I'm looking for prefabs. So I'm gonna go to the prefabs folder, and that's where we have our enemy prefab. So to do this, I'm just gonna drag him out. So I can grab him, left click drag into the scene, and then we can add more enemies that way. Of course, we could also just like the enemy and duplicate it like I did with the tokens, but this is another way to do it. So we can add a lot more enemies if we want to. Position them with the move tool. And then we can test it. I think First, anything else worked on with the project view. Yeah, it's project view. Also, I don't think you went over, it doesn't go over this in the tutorial, but another really important window is the console view. This is usually where when you're writing scripts, you'll print out to the console in order to help debug your game. And also, if any errors happen, they also show up here. So it's usually a good idea to keep an eye out on the console, see if you get any bugs or errors, and then deal with those. Before I go to the next slide, any questions? I have 5 minutes.
7?
Okay. Okay, I thought I would run out of time before I ran that's good. Okay, so in that case,
We technically have the room till 8:30, so I guess it depends on if you guys are cool staying going over 8.
it's fine. I don't want to bore everybody too much. I know it's a lot, especially if people don't have laptops. So, but I did have. I guess I'll go fast to the next things, just to show it a little bit. Again, I'm not a 2D person, so I actually kind of had to brush up on this and learn all these new tools myself. Because when I was actually messing with 2D stuff a few years ago, they didn't have some of these tools, so this is all new to me too. But I'll show you a little bit about how to add to the level. So real quick, to do that, what we need to do is use our new tile map editor. And the tutorial tells you to use this, but it doesn't tell you how to have it in the project because it's not in there by default. So a very important part of this is to go to Window and then go to Package Manager. And this is where you can see any packages that are in your project. And a package is just like kind of like a set of tools. Unity made a big move a few years ago to try to compartmentalize a lot of their features. So that way, when you're building a game, if you're building like a 3D game, you don't want all the 2D assets built into your game. So it's going to blow up your game for no reason. You're not using them. So they started packaging a bunch of stuff. And so a lot of times when you're, depending on what you're building, the features that you need might not be like accessible right when you enter Unity. So, so you see some of these here. They also have these kind of like groups of packages. So if you're going to do a 2D game, they have a package of 8 different, or they have a group of 8 different packages that you might want to use in your game that can help out too. So in this case, the one that we're just looking for is this tile map editor. So tile map editor, which you also find down here. I believe I actually need to find it. So if I hit install, I'm going to install every single one here.
A little bit higher up.
Oh, did I pass it? I think I think it's because I already have it in here. I did already. Oh, there it's because it starts with 2D. Yeah, so 2D tile map editor. You would need to install this in order to see this next feature. Quick. So we want to do is go to Window and then 2D. And if you don't have the tile map editor, it won't show up here. Now that we installed it, tile palette. And this is what they use now to have your whole level selection of blocks and stuff. So in order to paint, we can actually grab these. Use the paint tool actually, and then you can paint like more platforms and stuff like that. So it's just done by selecting these. What I did notice, again, this tool is fairly new to me, is that if you try to select, oh, actually it's worked this time. It's only working for me earlier, but there you go. You can draw more clouds. You'll see this in the background. I actually think I messed up right now. I'm going so quick. I drew these platforms into the background. In order to interact with them, you will need to draw them in the level. So this is kind of probably gonna trick people who are playing the game. I'm gonna jump on those. They do look a little darker. You can also over here when you have the tile map open, you can have these different views. If you go to tile map, you can actually see which parts are in what. So when you go to background, you just only see the background. And so you can, by using this, you can tell that they drew a little secret path here that drops down into this alien. There's an alien here. The little Easter egg that they hid in this project. So that can help us locate it. And then you can see over here too, they also added a secret wall. So on the level view, this isn't filled out, but in the background it is. So it looks like it's a wall that you would climb into, you can actually walk through it. So they accomplished that by just drawing that onto the different depths of the level. And in order to leave time for Ansley, I'm going to stop there and let her do her Green Society thing as my last thing. But I guess before that, real quick, any last questions?
One of the questions I had was, when you do that tile thing, that tile.
Yeah, the tile map.
When you put your own background, does it like create a tiles up on the background or the platforms and all that? Like, does it break it down?
I didn't look into how to create the tile maps. I think they have more. If you go to learn, they have more about how to like create those. So they have all the 2D assets, and then they create a tile map out of that. I think you just want to like go to project, then you create a tile map somewhere in here, 2D tile map. Probably somewhere around there. Any other questions?